Turtle Hospital, which for over 30 years has been doing amazing rehabilitation, rescuing, and reintroducing of injured sea turtles. They've done more hangouts with us than absolutely anyone, so we're always thrilled to have them back. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa. Thanks so much for joining us today, and take it away.
Hi, guys. So we're going to start here with one of our patients. This is Poseidon. And so you'll notice as we go along that some of our turtles do have some very interesting names. It's typically the people that find our turtles that get to name them. But Poseidon is a juvenile loggerhead. And so the loggerheads are one of the more common species that we see down here in Florida. And they get their name because they have a really, really large head. Not nearly as big when they're juveniles, but when they get to be adults, which you'll get to meet in a little bit, that head is the size of a basketball. But Poseidon, he's only about 2 years old. He's actually completely healthy. So he's part of what we call our Head Start program, which means that he came in as a hatchling, and then we've kept him for 2 years, giving him a chance to get big and healthy and strong, so that way when he does get released, he'll have a much better chance of survival, because not as many things will want to eat him. He'll be a lot bigger, a lot healthier, a lot stronger. So he'll be getting a head start on life. And so he'll be released later this summer, because he's nice big now. Or at least a lot bigger than he was. But he's doing amazingly well. And the cool thing about sea turtles especially is, like, you just saw him come up and take a breath, because they do have lungs. They breathe air just like we do. So when they're actually under the water like that, they're holding their breath. But they can hold their breath a lot longer than we can. So when we first came upon him, he was sleeping, because they're not like us. They're not awake all day, sleep at night. They just kind of take little cat naps whenever they're tired. And when they are sleeping, they can hold their breath up to about 5 hours. So a lot longer than we can hold our breath. But then otherwise, he can kind of pretty much do whatever he wants. If he's still tired, he can go back down and take another nap, or he'll come up, take a few more deep breaths, he'll swim around, he'll eat. It's, for the most part, pretty easy life for a sea turtle. As long as it's warm and there's food, they're pretty happy. And so our patients, they stay in their own individual tanks, which they're okay with that. Sea turtles are solitary in the wild. So the movie Finding Nemo got that part wrong. And that they don't meet their parents, they don't go traveling the currents together. So keeping them by themselves, they're okay with that. They don't get lonely, they're used to it. But when we can, we do sometimes put our turtles together. So we have our nice big pool here. This is a saltwater tidal pool. So it is connected directly to the ocean, because the ocean is not that far away. It's one of the perks of living on an island. But we use this pool for the turtles that we cannot release. So sometimes we get turtles in and we can get them completely healthy. They just are unable to survive on their own anymore in the wild. But otherwise, still really good. They just need a little bit extra help. So instead of releasing them to have them starve, we're going to keep them here, so that way they have a more natural pool, a larger pool, and they can just kind of hang out. But the most common reason why they are considered non-releasable is something that we call bubble butt syndrome, which you might notice that as these turtles are coming up, they tend to float. That's bubble butt syndrome. It's what happens when sometimes they get hit by a boat and it causes air to get trapped. It causes nerve damage, which now means that these turtles will permanently float. And so that floating is not normal in the wild, because in the wild, they eat at the bottom, they sleep at the bottom, they do everything at the bottom. So if they are stuck up at the top, they really become stuck. But here, it's okay if they float, because here we'll feed them up at the top. We'll make sure that they're not going to starve. But these guys have also learned that people tend to mean food, which is okay. People will always mean food. Then they'll come up to say hi. But because these guys do have bubble butt, we cannot release them, but we still want to make them a little bit more comfortable. So we attach lead weight to the outside of their shells. So that's what those kind of grayish ovals and circles are on their butts and on their sides. Those are weights. So when they want to, they can go down to the bottom and go to sleep. But eventually, those weights are going to fall off, so then they're back to floating again. And like little Bernie right there, she's the little one that Kent just pushed into the wall. Kent's the big guy, Bernie's the little guy. But Bernie and Kent, they like to hang out right underneath the pipes and right where some of the water comes in, because it feels good. It's like the jet of a hot tub, because they do have nerve endings throughout their shell. So think about rubbing your fingernail. How you can feel that? That's what they feel. And just like with dogs, some of them like it, some of them not so much. But because sea turtles are solitary in the wild, when you do put them together, they're not typically mean, but they're not exactly nice either. They just don't care. They ignore each other. So sometimes they will knock into each other. They'll sometimes steal food from each other, but they're not mean. They just don't care, especially with these guys. These are green sea turtles. They're the other common species that we get. So it's the greens and the loggerheads. And you might notice that even though they're called the green turtles, they're not exactly green. They're brown. But they get their name because they're primarily herbivores. So in the wild, they eat lots of seagrass and algae. Here, they still get green stuff, but it's more lettuce, kale, green peppers, cucumbers, more veggies. But they eat so much of that green stuff that their fat, their insides, end up turning green. So it's kind of like you are what you eat. Just be glad it doesn't work that way for us, because we all sorts of different colors. But like that guy, that's Coasty. Coasty was found by the Coast Guard. So I told you, the names are just fun. But the greens, they're most commonly what we see. And so that's most commonly what we have here. And so most common when they have to stay, it's because of bubble butt. But we do have two that do not have bubble butt. So Montel is hanging out right here. Montel's literally had everything. It's named after the talk show host because he came in with a lot of drama. So he's been hit by a boat, bit by a shark, entangled in fishing line, and he's had tumors. So he's missing half of his right front flipper, all of his left front flipper, his right eye, and his shell is dented on his left side. So he's had a hard life, but that's okay. In here, he doesn't have to be very fast. He doesn't have to worry about boats or sharks or even finding his own food. He can just kind of go at his own pace. And he doesn't have any problems with that. Just as long as you don't expect him to be fast or to win any races, which I'm not so good at that bit. But the other one is hiding. Our other non-releasable, non-bubble butt is April. He's blind, but he's hiding at the moment. That's one of the good things about this pool, is that it gives them a chance to be a little bit more natural, but if they also want to just sleep and hide, it's very hard to entice them to come up to the top. And then that is Rebel. He's an adult loggerhead. And so he's about 240 pounds. So he's a big boy. And so loggerheads will get to be about 400 pounds. So he's still got some growing to do. And you know that he is a boy, but an adult, but he's got a long tail. So when these sea turtles are younger, like little Kruk, they look identical. You can't tell just by looking at Kruk if Kruk is a boy or a girl, but Kruk could go for either boy or girl name. It's only once they get to be adults, then if they're a boy, they get a very long tail. Whereas if they're a girl, tail stays really short, doesn't go past the end of their shell. And so Rebel, of course, now he's out there in the middle. He's not going to show us his tail. He does have a very long tail. And then we sometimes end up with turtles with the wrong names. So we do have an April, who's a boy, a George, who's a girl. But luckily, the turtles, they don't care. They don't know what their names are. Their names are really just for us. So it keeps it kind of fun. But those are our non-releasable turtles. Our patients, the rest of our patients, the ones that are actually sick, they have their own tanks. And one of the good things about us is that we are located right here on the ocean. And so that's where we get all of our turtles, is from the boaters and the fishermen. So the people that are out there on the water, they see a turtle that just doesn't look normal, and then they call us. And then we have an ambulance. We'll go pick that turtle up. Or if the boat is close enough, they can come right here into our docks. And if the turtle is on the smaller side, we can give the boater permission to get the turtle on their boat, and they just kind of bring it into us. Whereas the turtle's a little bit bigger, then we'll call for help. But like this little guy, this is Little Palm. He was found right off of Little Palm Island. So he's just about 30 pounds. He's a juvenile green sea turtle. So he's been here about a month. He came in, he was found floating, and he has tumors. And so these green sea turtles, they have a virus called fibropapilloma. We tend to call it FP for short, but it causes tumors to grow on their soft tissues. So their neck, their flippers, their eyes, which makes it very hard for these turtles to see or to swim. So they have to come in and we do surgery. We remove all of those tumors. And then once they've been tumor-free for long enough and they've built up an immunity to that virus, then we can release them. So Little Palm here has only been here a month. She's already had, I think, 1 surgery. So we've removed a few of her tumors, but can't remove all of the tumors at once. So you just break it up into multiple smaller surgeries. So she still has a few tumors. So especially right there, kind of in that front right armpit and on the side of her neck, those little growths, those are those tumors. And so at the moment, she must have an itch because she's just kind of scratching herself up against the PVC pipe there. And that's kind of why it's there. That's a toy, because in the wild, they have rocks and ledges and reefs. So things that they can hide under or sleep under, rub their shells up against. Here, we can't always give them that, so they get PVC pipe instead. And sometimes they're just very itchy. And it's not exactly like they can scratch their backs. Flippers don't exactly work that way. But Little Palm is doing very good. We'll give her a couple weeks, let her heal up from her last surgery, and then we'll do surgery again, remove some more of those tumors. And then how many surgeries they need kind of depends on the turtle, and it depends on how many tumors they have and the size of the tumors and where those tumors are located. One of our patients just had surgery yesterday. Her name is Maisie. And so she's currently all bandaged up. I think we were going for like an 80s neon look this week, but that's why she's all bandaged, because she just had surgery yesterday. And wound care in sea turtles, a little bit different than it is for people, because you can't exactly just stick Neosporin and a Band-Aid on it. Band-Aids don't tend to work out very well underwater. And in a lot of ways, sea turtles are kind of like toddlers. They don't always understand that what we're doing is trying to help them. They just know, I don't like that. I want this thing off. So they're very good at getting out of their bandages. So with sea turtles, it's one of those cases where more is sometimes a good thing. And so that's why Maisie, not quite like a mummy, but she's got a lot of bandages on at the moment, just because that's the only way we can get them to stay on. But because she just had surgery yesterday, she's kind of weak at the moment. She's recuperating. So for most of today, she'll probably just kind of sleep and hang out. And then over the next few days, she'll start feeling better, and then she'll start getting a little bit more active. In a lot of ways, they are just like us. Because when you get sick, you get very weak and tired. You just want to sleep all day. Same thing with the turtles. And so that's why sometimes we will give them the shallow water. So she's only in about 1.5 feet of water. So just enough that she can swim around if she wants to. But if all she wants to do is sleep, that's okay too. She really just has to lift her head up just a little bit to breathe. And for right now, she's just taking a nap. But those are some of our greens, especially ones that have those tumors. But we also get a lot of boat strikes. So this is slightly bigger turtle. This is Madea. So she's about 190 pounds. So not quite as big as Rebel, but pretty close. But she's a loggerhead, just like Rebel. So she does have that very large head. Told you, it's the size of like a basketball. But she was hit by a boat. So she's got a lot of damage to the back end of her shell. But she is very lucky because even though it's very wide, it wasn't very deep. So it didn't pierce anything important or essential. So it is healing. She's been here since the middle of May. And so it's doing very, very well. But their healing process is very similar to us. They get a cut that scabs and then scar tissue forms. And even on their shell, that shell is bone. So it does heal, just never fully regenerate. So she'll just never look perfect again. But that's okay. Scars are a part of growing up. And so she's been here for a few months now. So the scar tissue is filling in. Once the scar tissue is fully filled in, so no more scab, no more chance of infection, that's the point at which we can say that they are releasable. But with her, it does seem to have damaged her spinal cord. Her rear flippers are paralyzed and her back end does float. So most likely she is a bubble butt. So instead of her being released, most likely she'll get upgraded down to the bottom pool with the rest of our non-releasable turtles. But we'll wait until she's completely healed before we make that final determination. So just a few more months. And it's just like with people, it all depends on the severity of the injury as to how long it takes to heal. Sometimes these turtles are here for a month or two. Sometimes it's 6 months. Sometimes it's a year, year and a half. Each turtle is just a little bit different. And it all depends on what condition they're in when they first come in. Like Crush, he's one of our newer turtles. He just came in on Saturday. Saturday was a very busy day for us. We got 2 of these large green sea turtles. He's about 100 pounds, but he has an impaction, which means he's eaten some stuff he was not supposed to. We're not quite sure what yet, but a lot of times it does end up being trash and plastic and stuff that they're not supposed to eat, which is why it blocks them all up, makes them constipated, unable to poop, and very gassy. So he tends to float a little lopsided. So we try to even him out. We put Velcro down each side of his shell with some little foam blocks, sort of like floaties. And then getting him started on meds to help him poop. Because once he starts pooping and gets rid of all of that, he'll feel a lot better. But he's only been here since Saturday, so he's got a little while to go yet. But again, just kind of sleeping. And then some turtles are kind of different. Because the most common things that we get are like the boat strikes, entanglements, impactions, and tumors. But this guy, this is Splinter. Told you, sometimes the names are fun. But he's about 150-pound green. Also came in on Saturday. So Saturday, very busy day, 2 very large green sea turtles. But Splinter also needed surgery on Saturday. He came in with an entanglement, but he wasn't entangled around his flipper. He was entangled on a spear. When he came in, he had a spear coming out of his neck. And so he had crab trap and fishing line wrapped around the spear, a little bit around his flipper, but mainly around that spear. So he had been entangled for a while. And the crazy thing was, we did x-rays to look at that spear because we had to figure out how deep it went and kind of what was going on with it before we figured out a plan. Turns out that spear went almost halfway through his body. Almost 2 feet of that spear was actually inside of him, which, looking at him now, you're kind of look at this x-ray and go, okay, sure, how are you still active? But miraculously, that spear managed to miss everything. It didn't hit his lungs. It didn't hit any of his internal organs. It must have just gotten lodged kind of in like the fatty kind of muscle area right along the very top edge of his shell. So extremely lucky turtle. And so, looking amazingly well, but he does have an infection. That spear had been in there for a little while. So he's on a course of heavy duty antibiotics and just kind of wound care from where we had to pull that spear out. But hopefully, as long as he continues doing well, it shouldn't be too long, probably just a few months before he's able to be released. But just an amazing story. We don't see that very often, which is a good thing. It is illegal to kill, harm, harass, pretty much interfere with sea turtles in any way because they are an endangered species. That's one of the reasons why we're here, to help take care of them. And so in some cases, things like this, they are accidental. So it gives us a chance to just kind of remind everybody and teach everybody that these turtles, they are protected. And it's kind of our job to help protect them, because there's a lot of people that just don't know, especially if you're not used to sea turtles in your everyday life. But he is just doing awesome.